Good afternoon, my dear CX leaders and innovators. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to our CX Transformation webinar series. Before I introduce today's speakers and panelists, let me walk you all through some of the basic features of this webinar. So all attendees will be on mute by default. We encourage this webinar to be interactive, so there is options for you to chat, ask questions to the speakers, to the panelists, as well as the organizers. Everyone would be able to see the chat option on the right-hand side of the panel. And there are also a couple of handouts which is there for download. So without any further delay, I would like to welcome Joseph Kanyuha, who's the head of, who's the customer experience and innovation leader and head for SAP East and West Africa. He's a seasoned technology and business professional. Joe is passionate about helping brands thrive in experience economy. He's also brings in superb experience to the job, having advised hundreds of businesses, both local and international, on customer experience evolution in particular, as well as on the technology in general. Joe holds two graduate Joe is a graduate from both Kenyatta University and the University of Liverpool. While not in very serious corridors, he loves traveling, motorsports, soccer, and outdoors. Joe loves writing on topics on current issues, engaging his audience on social media platforms. Beyond that, Joe is a polished speaker, as well as you don't want to miss his insights on perspectives in the upcoming webinar. Joe, it's a pleasure to have you a part of this webinar. Honor to us. And the stage is all yours. The screen is all yours. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for that introduction. It's always good to hear someone else introduce you. I really hope I can live up to that kind of introduction. Thank you, Mohammed. So I think I'll go. I know we have 1 hour, 30 minutes, but a lot to do. So I go straight to showing my screen. Tell me when you can see my screen.
Yes, the screen is all yours.
Okay, brilliant. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening. I know we have people from all over the world. This is the new order. We are calling it business unusual. Maybe some things people are calling it the new normal. I personally think it's the new abnormal. Because most of the things that we have been grown up to think that this is mainstream, they have really changed, courtesy of a pandemic. You can live 100 years and never see this. I think for the Kenyans who know President Moi, lived almost 100 years, and I don't think he really went through what we are going through right now. But it's all good. I think in any crisis, there'll always be opportunity. It's a crisis, yes, and we all have to conform to all the requests that we are being asked to conform to by the World Health Organization, by respective governments here and in West Africa. But we'll come out of this strong, albeit with a lot of lessons to learn. So I'm so honored. I know in the audience we have very respected customer experience specialists. Some are captains of industry. So I'm truly honored together with the panelists that we have to headline this conversation. So let's talk quickly about how we can enhance experiences in the experience economy that we are living in. And in the run-up to this webinar, I was just looking around to see the headlines that are coming in. Who is not now learning how to maybe do their hair or get their hair shaved at home? These are some of the things we are getting to start accustomed to. The home office now, like I'm seated in my house, I'm staying in my house for 4 days, 96 hours without stepping outside. So the home office is becoming very much in demand. And moving on, you can see even industries that like oil and gas that rarely struggle. We all know that these are usually very thriving industries, but right now they are really struggling. Who would have anticipated that? Groceries, you can see in the case of Kenya, the orders are tripling. And if you're coming from airlines, and I know that I have people in the audience who are in the airline industry, the impact there has been really astronomical. And you can see what the IATA or the ICAO is looking at in terms of losses, and that's even on the conservative end. And our bedrooms and kitchens are nowadays our offices. So this is business unusual if you think about it. And I know you have seen other headlines that have really shocked you. I heard yesterday the CEO of Twitter saying that there are some employees who can work from home forever. Who really would have thought about that? So these are really what I would call abnormal times. This is the new abnormal. It's not really the new normal, but in it they are pristine, they're very much pristine opportunities for us to reorient, and especially our customer experience and how we engage with them, over and above the changes definitely that we'll have to do in our lifestyles. And a few weeks ago, I had posted this on my Facebook, and it was really spot on looking at what's happening, because I personally believe that people will have to really learn how to recalibrate their minds and beliefs for you to survive as a brand, whatever industry you are in. I know we have people in the utility sector, in public sector, in banking, in insurance, in oil and gas. The new normal, the new abnormal won't really, you won't need to carry a lot of baggage from what you have been doing in the past. You will need to recalibrate minds, because your customers will also have recalibrated theirs. So it's a high time, it's a chance for us to all reorient our beliefs and our minds, and our suppositions, things that we have come to think that they'll always be true, definitely have come to change. And many of the people on Facebook who are reacted to this seem to agree with me. And I also looked at the PricewaterhouseCoopers Global Customer Resilience Report. I believe you can see the industries that you come in. If you see the left-hand side of this image, you can see there are only 3 industries that are in the green side. These are telecoms, media, and healthcare. So they're on the green side, meaning that to them, maybe they have seen the crisis has come as an impetus, as a propulsive force that's pushing their businesses forward. Of course, the healthcare, it's obvious because it's a health issue. The media, because you have to stay informed. And of course, the telcos, because when you are self-isolated, when you're in quarantine, you definitely need to communicate like we are doing now. So, but all the other industries, you can see they're either in amber, in orange, or in red. And the perspective, as you go right to on the screen, you can see that the number of greens are starting to increase. And in the long run, that is in 2021 and beyond, you can see that that's when PwC expects that most of these industries will get to perform. So we are in for a bumpy ride, at least in the next couple of months. So it's a question of then how do you keep your businesses afloat in light of this reality that you cannot just wish away. And one point that I saw, and I think I underlined it, is for businesses to come out of this strong, their customer engagement strategy, you can see it underlined and boldened and emboldened, and to also find new ways of working in the new economy. This new economy, what we call the experience economy, is going to require you to reorient your organizational structures, to change your business strategies, to engage in a much more smarter way with your customers and partners and suppliers. So this is you've seen the cartoons which are saying that a board meeting was happening and people are like, okay, digital transformation doesn't live here. We'll think about it maybe in Vision 2030. But then the COVID pendulum came, and that changes that kind of mindset, including in boardrooms. So I know that we have decision makers here. We have CEOs in this session. We have heads of departments. We have business leaders. So we don't want to give the COVID-19 a lot of credit, which we shouldn't, because it's really shaking up our lifestyles and our livelihoods as we know it. But the reality is, in the world of business, there will be a lot of changes that will be required. So it's time to smell the coffee. It's not the time to be a laggard. And just a quick history, if you see how the world has evolved. We started in the industrial economy. And in the industrial economy, the main focus was on products. What are you making? A refrigerator, a car, a screen, a computer. But then we have seen how many countries, like for example, Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, our economies are pretty much really inclined on the service economy. Banking, insurance, telcos, they are really the driving force behind what we are seeing in our economies right now. But then today we are talking about the experience economy, and in the experience economy, the main commodity is experiences, things which are intangible. So the question then begs, so what is the experience economy? In simple terms, I looked for definitions online, and I really like this. It's very simple from the Harvard Business Review, that in the experience economy is just a case where you can be using services as trade and just the goods as props to offer very personalized and memorable experiences to your customers. However you define customer, it can be if you're coming from the public sector, you will be talking to citizens, and of course you're coming from the profit making sector, you're talking about real customers who engage with you on trade. But this is very critical. So it doesn't mean that products will cease to exist. We'll still need to buy refrigerators and cars, and at the same time we'll need these products to be serviced. Even if I'm buying a service from the bank, they still call them products. Even when I fly Kenya Airways, or Kenya Airways launches, say, a new route, say Nairobi to Geneva, they say we are improving our product. So it's true, it's a product, and then it's served on the stage of a service, because I am not buying the jet, I'm just sitting on seat number 33J, and in Nairobi, and maybe exiting in Switzerland. But the experience that I get in between determines a lot whether I'll engage with that brand, whether it's KQ or it's a bank or even a gas station. So this is very, very critical. So this is the new order, and there are very many offshoots of the experience economy. You can think about the sharing economy, like you've seen with ride sharing, for example, and many other economies, the digital economy, the information economy. They are all offshoots of the experience economy. The keyword there being experience, because it determines your survivability. And again, this might be the most boring slide you see, but I think it's important. The reason why we're having this webinar is because all of us want to be customer experience leaders. And you can see that if you are a leader, if you see the left-hand side of the screen, you can see it's an average greater than 2 times the compounded annual growth rate for people who are loyalty leaders, meaning that their customer experience is superb compared to their organizations, in terms of how do we keep our top line high, and how do we keep our cost low. So if you're in banking, the cost to serve, if you go digital and you offer customer self-service much more possible, then you can see your profitability ends up improving. So we know this. And even in terms of higher value creation, again, the far right of this slide, you can see the 80 percentage points, the difference between organizations that are adjudged as CX leaders vis-a-vis those that are judged as CX laggards. So in brief, then what are we really saying? That in this experience economy, customer journeys will change, especially in the context of the crisis that we have seen. Digital acceleration will be mandatory. A digital orientation of your brand will definitely be mandatory, because now if you think about customers not coming to your store anymore, you no longer have physical human connections. People are self-isolating, people are staying at home, people are physical distancing. Then how your customer journeys really cannot remain the same unless your intention is actually to wind up. So we're talking about how do you create much more secure, trusted relationships with your customers. And these now are in a situation where you don't see them face to face. We had a CEO at SAP, the former CEO, Bill McDermott, he used to say that trust is the ultimate human currency. And I cannot agree more with him. And he even used to add and say, that trust is earned in spoonfuls, but it is lost in buckets. That is so true, more so in business. If your customers can just one day just decide, no, this brand is not really working for us. So how do you foster secure, trusted relationships in a digital engagement scenario? It means you definitely have to know your customers better. And knowing them, that means digitally, not just to know their address and their names and their IDs. It's also knowing what they do online. It might look as if you are trying to poll so much, but the more you know, and the more you prove to these customers that your brand represents substance and value, the more they will stick with you. And definitely security. We have seen things like Zoom bombing. You can see the hackers, the adversaries will always be ahead of the curve. So when you are delivering your services and products online, then you have to really think about whether you have a customer experience platform that is also secure. In terms of intelligent customer engagement, we've been saying marketing has gone largely it has gone largely digital. So yes, we still know TV and billboards will still have their space, but today it's all about intelligent customer engagement. The keyword there being intelligent, because you can engage in a daft way, but we all know that is data that makes you, the more data and information and knowledge and wisdom that makes your marketing targeting very, very pointed so that your conversion can be high. If it's about research, very, very important how you research and understand it. You need to be able to listen digitally to what your customer intentions and feelings really are. For those of you who follow maybe the news, you might have seen that SAP invested in a company called Qualtrics, which really does this. And for the prize money that was paid, $8 billion, it tells you just how important it is to have a listening platform. But not just the listening aspect, it's also about the understanding. Can you be able to make sense out of those customer feelings which are expressed on Glassdoor, which are expressed on Facebook, which are expressed on Twitter, even on emails that are sent to you? Can you make sense of all that and then understand that and then activate your organization? So we say listen, understand, and then act. Because it's one thing to ask me what I felt after I dined in your restaurant. It's completely another for you to actually follow up and know and improve your business processes based on the feedback that I gave you. Then there's the digital selling and buying. You've seen businesses are really going online. Even your local grocery store that is just around the corner, wherever you are, in Lagos, in Accra, in Nairobi, in Nakuru, wherever you are, you see now every business is trying to think, how can I actually create a web store, for example, a web shop? Because customers won't be coming to, if it's a restaurant, I need to order online and then they deliver. So these are the new realities. We need to be able to sell and buy online. And almost the last point, we are talking about frictionless order fulfillment. This is very critical. You can have an excellent buying experience, but the way a product is delivered either to your doorstep or it's delivered even if it's digitally. If it's, as for example, I'm signing up a new bank account or I'm taking a policy, how you fulfill that order can actually be the point of departure. So this is very, very important. You need to reduce the effort, or rather the experience that your customers get when you are fulfilling those particular orders. Then lastly but not least, the digital customer support, very critical. And today we are talking about things like conversational artificial intelligence, what people call bots or chatbots. We are also talking about self-service. I need to help myself as much as possible. I saw a research somewhere say that 80% of customers attempt to help themselves first before they can even try to get in touch with your brand. So how are you helping us to actually do as much as possible on our end so that we can reduce the demand in your call centers, your contact centers, and what have you? So these are critical areas I thought it's good to highlight. I know the panelists will talk about them at some point, and you might have questions around them. But for me, in terms of recalibrating your customer journey in line with what we are seeing today, I think if you address these areas, you'll be on a good standing. So what am I saying is that for us, because at SAP, we help our customers to improve how they engage with their end customers. Wherever you need support in the front office, the front office being the customer experience, usually it's a more of a front office thing. But the word front office here also raises the point that there is a back office, which you should never forget, because more often than not, when you get a bad customer experience, it's most likely that the back office is broken. So the finance team did not invoice in time, or the core banking system had a downtime and therefore customers kept calling the call center, or the supply chain is broken. Like today now, we know that the supply chain is really, really broken because you can't move goods as easily as you would. You can't move people as easily as you could in the past. So that the back office is very important, but for today's discourse, we are limiting our conversation of the front office, knowing that you might want to query. So the front office is broad, and really all these points that you can see on this screen, these are topics we can discuss for weeks on end, and we won't be able to isolate or rather to finish with them. Maybe I just need to highlight some which maybe they might not be very familiar. I've already explained the conversational artificial intelligence one with chatbots and those capabilities. So these are things that helps customers to really do much more of self-serving. The other point I want to highlight is customer consent. Right now, very few brands really capture customer consent and keep it digitally, because with data protection, things like you've seen the global data protection regulations, you've seen data privacy, you've seen the data privacy bill that, for example, in Kenya was passed recently. And any country you are in, they are definitely thinking how do they enforce and ensure that data protection and privacy is considered. We have capabilities to help you store consent, even revocation of that consent. We are able to do that so that you can enhance your relationships. The other point I want to highlight is on learning, very, very critical. I think, and I've engaged with so many businesses to realize that they just focus on just automating the front office. But the aspect of customer experience learning is also very critical. Either the customers to learn themselves, or the customer care agents, or the retail sales executives. You need to empower them with knowledge so that they can serve your customers better. So what am I saying? Wherever you want to, whichever business you are in, whether you're in government, whether you're in the private sector, if you need to recalibrate your lead to care process, because normally the customer experience solutions speak to this business process, which we call the lead to care. Meaning, how do you get leads into your business, convert them to business opportunities, straight into the customer committing to buy, and then you delivering and fulfilling that order, straight to getting the money from these customers as a cash point, and eventually you'll need to care for this customer. So these domains you can see at the top, they speak to this business process, the lead to care process. So if you have any need there, you definitely want to talk to us. So this is my parting shot. I'll leave you with a quote from our Chief Marketing Officer, that really taking action with technology is pivotal for overcoming challenges, no matter how big or small, whether those challenges are in your customer experience business process, or there are things like contact tracing. You can see countries that are doing contact tracing using technology, they are succeeding more than those who are relying on how much I'm willing to tell. So these are the new realities of life, so don't be afraid. Digitization, they say digital transformation is a journey without a destination, but certainly you need to have the right partner to walk with you. So for me, I will want to leave it at that. I know the conversation will keep going. There's so much to talk about, and I know we have excellent panelists who will take us through this conversation. But definitely you can link up, you can follow conversation there, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn, where we can carry on with the conversation. So other than that, mine is to say thank you for listening. I hope I really kept the time. Yeah, I can see it's around 14:24, so I'm within time. And push the conversation back to Mohammed. Thank you.
Joe, thank you for that very interesting and thoughtful, insightful conversation that you've given us. A lot of insights being shared. In fact, we have one of the attendee delegate sharing his insight as well.
Yes.
He's been telling we have seen an increase of 3 times transaction on self-service kiosks. Customers are preferring using kiosks for transaction instead of using agents at banks or at telecom branches. And
Yes.
this has happened since March, and this trend is all tend to going up. So I think these are all positive trends. Of course, COVID could be a reason behind that, but then
Yes.
keeping aside COVID, these are the trends probably is going to be fueling in all the digital transformation that the various industries are looking up at. Jeff.
I cannot agree more, and I think we are in agreement with them, because that's what I was talking to earlier. Remember, even before this crisis started, already very many businesses were trying to reorient their digital engagement strategies. But now, what has happened with COVID, because of enforcement of these rules, so people have to stay at home. I see the crisis being able to turbocharge the rate at which adoption by both customers as well as businesses is happening. So people need to take advantage of that. Businesses need to take advantage of that. Thank you.
Fantastic. So there is a very small poll question that's out for the attendees. It would hardly take a couple of minutes. So I would launch that poll. I would request all attendees to take that polling question. And once that's completed, we will go on to the next session, which would be the panel discussion.
Okay.
So there is a clear indication of what the audience are saying about, how personalized would you say your customer offerings are today?
Very interesting, the power results that we're getting. Just taking
Very
note.
true.
Yes, yes.
So as we move on to the next session, I would like to introduce Julia, who is a certified customer experience professional. Julia has been guiding organization on how to gain market leadership through customer centricity. She has worked with blue chip clients such as JP Morgan, American Express, Virgin, just to name a few, to deliver on their brand promise and foster customer loyalty through great experiences. Julia leverages her knowledge of global best case practices, understanding of the local market to unite organizations around the customer. She has a degree in economics and foreign language. She is a certified customer experience professional and consults business as an independent advisor. Julia is also the host of monthly podcast Decoding the Customer, which explores business trends and innovation in the field of CX. Julia, it's a pleasure to have you part of this show, and we take pleasure in having you as also the moderator of the event. So welcome to the show. Look forward to have a meaningful conversation, panel discussion on how to leverage CX during and post COVID-19 challenges. Julia, the stage and the screen is all yours.
Great. Well, thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here today with this fantastic group of panelists. Yeah, so just kicking off with introducing everybody. I think that you gave a really nice introduction for Joe. And I thought I'd dive into the other panelists. Are they also on the call? I don't see their screens yet, their webcams yet.
I'm just
there we go. There's Veronica.
Hello, Julia.
Hi, Seema and Brian. Great. Well, while we're waiting for Seema for her webcam to show up, I will start with the other introductions. Veronica, also known as Vera, is a results-oriented senior executive with global leadership experience in effectively aligning initiatives with strategic business direction. Currently the Customer Experience Director for Airtel Africa Nigeria. She was previously the Country Operations Director for Airtel Africa in Tanzania, which included customer experience across Airtel showrooms, sales, distribution, and marketing. She's grown over the last 18 years in a diverse corporate environment, which includes telecoms and financial services. Her key focus area is driving corporate profitability through excellent customer service delivery. Veronica is an alumnus of Harvard Business School in Boston, Massachusetts, and Warwick Business School in Coventry, United Kingdom. Thank you so much, Veronica, for joining us today. Looking very much forward to hearing your insights.
Thank you very much, Julia. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to a very insightful discussion with the panelists.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Continuing with the ladies, ladies first, we have Seema D'Souza. Seema is the Deputy Director of Customer Experience at the NCBA Group. She supports all of the bank's customer-facing activities. She's had a banking career that spans over 22 years. Her career stretches across bank operations in the early formative years of her working life, followed by several business roles within the personal, corporate, and transactional banking arena, finally culminating in the customer experience arena. She's been responsible for handling several key launch and change projects within her career, including launching the personal banking arm of the business for NIC titled Move, rolling out the first CBA Smart Branch model, and transforming the CBA call center into a more connected customer channel. She was also responsible for setting up the entire customer experience pillar at CBA by ensuring that the CX ethos was weaved into the fabric of all products, processes, channels of people, supported by an effective quality assurance model. Currently, she's handling the largest CX project of her career as she drives a successful seamless integration post the merger of NIC and CBA to form NCBA Bank. So sounds like some exciting career experience, and we're very much looking forward to hearing your input today in the panel. Thank you, Seema, for joining us.
Thanks, Julia, for having me. Looking forward to a great session today.
Fantastic. And last but most certainly not least, we have Rudian Stow. Rudian is a futurist, strategist, business transformation leader. He drives the SAP Intelligent Enterprise Solutions business across Europe, Middle East, and Africa as part of the global SAP Intelligent Enterprise Solutions line of the business, reporting into the global VP for SAP Intelligent Enterprise Solutions. He focuses on leading cross-functional teams that help customers transform their businesses and accelerate their journeys towards becoming truly intelligent digital enterprises, enabled by SAP, of course. His goal is to bring together the entire SAP ecosystem and its experience with deep process and industry knowledge advanced design thinking with differentiating intelligent technology capabilities such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, the Internet of Things, blockchain, advanced analytics, and big data. All powered through the SAP Cloud platforms with a focus on driving organizational business outcomes that influence the top and bottom line of the enterprise. Thank you, Rudian, so much for joining us. Oh, sorry, we can't hear you. I think you might be muted. But thank you so much for joining us. We're looking very much forward to including your input in this panel as well. So to kick things off, let's just dive straight in into the questions. Kicking off with a question, you know, COVID-19 is the topic du jour. It's something that we definitely cannot escape in this world that we're living in. And I wanted to know, how has the current health crisis changed consumer behavior in the industries and markets that you work? What have you seen in terms of changes in needs, preferences, and expectations from customers? And let's do this sort of round robin style. And Seema, would you like to kick us off with that one?
Sure. Thanks so much for that question, Julia. I'd just like to start off by picking on something that Joe spoke about that stuck in my mind, which is I had to write it down, recalibrating minds and beliefs. And I think that it's just change that stems from such a huge pandemic that can actually force us to do that. But if I was to just pick on, you know, the consumer behavior, which Joe also aptly summarized, and just go deeper into some of the behaviors that have changed as a result of this pandemic, I'd speak to the first one, which I think is quite key, is what we now call, instead of the World Wide Web, we call the worldwide home, because we are confined to our home. I mean, we're working from home right now. We're handling this webinar from home, and therefore the home is becoming our universe. And so the consumer behavior also is therefore shaped and molded by that significant change. The other thing that I could mention is the behavior that has changed as a result of government and, you know, WHO kind of initiatives where we are social distancing, and therefore as a result of that, there have been several implementations within different countries around curfews, lockdowns, and so forth, which then affect the retail behavior, how it is that we shop, like Joe mentioned. You know, in Kenya, we're not allowed to leave the house past 7, and therefore people leave early, shops close early. If they are allowed to open, a lot of shops are not open. So therefore we've shifted now to the third item, which is now digital, where there's a lot of e-commerce taking place. Everyone is shopping online. Deliveries are the order of the day. And, you know, even the way that we learn, for example, has changed. I mean, there are people that have logged into this webinar with a view of learning. And ideally, this would have been a physical event that took place. So it really has shaped the way that we are now connecting digitally. The other thing that I think that has come out of this in terms of a shift in behavior is our focus on health as individuals. We have become healthy creatures, possibly because of additional time we have, but also fundamentally because we need to build our immune system. So you'll find a lot of people who are more and more interested in being healthy, cooking healthy. I certainly have started cooking, which is not very usual for me. So healthy habits are becoming also the order of the day. The final thing that I would like to just pick on very quickly is the downside, or what is known as the distancing dark side, because as a result of this lack of physical interaction, we have basically been confined into smaller spaces. Cabin fever is the order of the day now, looking at increased anxiety levels, you know, depression, loneliness. And that's also another thing that we really must be cognizant of as customer experience professionals, and how it is that we understand that the customer is going through at this point in time. So a lot of behavioral changes as a result of this. Customers are trying new things, going online, online gaming, online consultations, you know, online entertainment seems to be what everyone is doing right now. Thanks, Julia.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So lots and lots of changes, multifaceted. Veronica, would you like to, what do you think about this? What have you seen in the space that you're working in? How have behaviors changed?
Well, I think similar to what Seema has said, is just to add, because the customer behavior across the world, I think it's relatively similar when you look at the lifestyle, because we're all faced with the same pandemic, we are faced with the same conditions. So you would see similar behaviors across. But just to add also that because of the impact on businesses, small, medium, large businesses, there's been there's serious pressure on financial capability. So disposable income is shrinking because a lot of people work and eat from day to day. Not a lot of people have big jobs that they're able to get salaries and have adequate funds to last them for 30 days. As a result of that, there's a lot of frustration among the consumers, and because of the reduction in the disposable income, you also find a lot of discount seeking among customers. So they expect a lot of understanding. They expect a lot of consideration, on their bills. I mean, I work in a telecommunications company, so you have a lot of customers who are asking for extended payment periods and discounts. And like Seema rightly mentioned, because of the frustration, and the psychological impact of this, you see that also tends to come out in the way that customers approach or react to basic simple things, because they don't have any other, they don't have a lot of ways to express their frustration. So this tends to come out. But there's also a lot of optimism. I was reading McKinsey's some survey that they carried out between the 15th of March and 3rd of May. And across the world, people tend to be very hopeful and optimistic that this too, would pass, and things are going to get back to normal. Although the level of optimism based on their survey is thinning, is coming down slowly, as the the impact of the pandemic appear to be one that would last for a long time. But I think digitization is the big thing now, and a lot of customers are learning and trying new things and trying to be more creative to see how they can generate more income, because their normal way of generating income has completely been shut. Thank you.
And that will most certainly have ripple effects onto all product and service providers as income goes down, and as consumers are more stressed, that they're going to also kind of take that out on their service providers,
Absolutely.
Teams to be kind of ready for that onslaught. Joseph, would you like to add anything to this? What else are you seeing in the arenas that you're working in?
Julia, are you talking to me or to Rodion?
To either of you.
Okay, maybe Rodion, you want to go first?
Yeah, happy to take that. I think I just had a bit of a glitch. Apologies for that.
No
I think
problem.
the fundamental question is, how has the pandemic not changed daily life, right? So things would have been unthinkable a few months ago, we now accept as normal. So I think at a macro level, what we're seeing definitely is this pullback on discretionary spend, because there's just not that much to go around anymore. And then there's the shift that has also happened with regards to people going from physical to digital, right, for the delivery of and consumption of products and services. So if you think about consumer sentiment, it's very interesting when you look at the globe in certain sectors and geographies. There's higher levels of optimism, especially in the Asian countries, whereas if you look at the Americas and the Europeans, there seems to be a definite plummet in terms of their optimism with regards to this. I think that the personal effect of COVID-19 will be long-lasting, as people will become hypersensitive to things that we took for granted just a couple of months ago. As I think about things like restaurant dinners or business travel, simple things like handshakes or hugs, or even somebody having a cold or flu in the office. I certainly would be casting a look around if somebody sneezes more than once in a meeting room 6 months from now. So very interesting times ahead, and some of these changes that we see will be with us long after the pandemic is cleared.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything to add, Joe?
Absolutely. Maybe just to add yes to what, and I completely agree with Rudion. And this again speaks to the point of people recalibrating their minds. It's both businesses as well as individuals, because the customer change of behavior will also influence how the business delivers. I was seeing yesterday online, I think it was on CNN, there's a restaurant that has reopened in Amsterdam, and they are creating glass, what you call glass
I saw that
enclosures that
they're kind of like little greenhouses.
yeah, exactly. I don't know whether you saw that. So two people are seated in a restaurant. So
Yeah.
it's like these things are greenhouses that they normally put flowers. So you can imagine
Yeah.
that kind of. So the isolation is getting to that level. So I think these changes in behavior will happen. But if I tell you about what we are seeing at SAP, because SAP has customers all over the world, we can also see what Veronica was saying, that there are customers who are now pushing for some concessions, for example, extended payment terms. So even as a company that has global reach, we are seeing that because our customers are businesses, and because they are getting a feel they are losing revenues, they are also starting to see how can I engage my suppliers to make concessions here and there. So these trends will certainly be here with us. It's about how you do deal with them as a business.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. These changes are going to kind of work their way through the supply chain for sure. Every single business out there is going to be impacted in some way, shape, or form by this. What I'd like to explore next is this idea of, so we know that the environment has changed. We know that, customer preferences and expectations are really changing. As a response to that, are there any experiences that need to be completely reinvented from the ground up? Or do you guys think that the adaptation is really more a case of shifting the emphasis to some of the existing experiences or channels that are better suited to customer needs in the current context? So thinking specifically about, some of the digital experiences that are out there. What are you seeing in your businesses or with your clients? Is it a matter of reinventing things, or can we mostly service the new needs of clients or the new needs of customers with kind of the existing channels? And at this one, Rudion, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so I think if we firstly just take a bit of a step back, I think one of the first things we must acknowledge is that all relationships have an emotional component associated to them. And that holds true for the relationship between brands and people as well, right? So your brand's relationship with its customers is built up over time. It's nourished by experiences along many touch points, whether those touch points are physical or digital. It's neither here nor there. So right now, if you think about it, your most important stakeholder is a human being that is craving comfort, is craving security and a sense of connection. And on top of it, they suddenly need an entirely new customer experience as a result of this pandemic that we are in. So if you think about just a country like Italy, for example, 33% of the people in Italy have family members or know of somebody that has been impacted by COVID-19. Think about the trauma a society like that goes through during a time like this. Or think about it from a perspective in the USA, where February month, you had a 3.5% unemployment rate, and now you're sitting with 15% unemployment rate. What does that do to the anxiety and the emotional levels of consumers? And the reason I mention this is because your first question during this time shouldn't be how do I grab market share, or how do I boost my top line revenue to counteract the economic carnage that I'm facing. Your most pressing question as a business must be, how do I support my customers in a meaningful, empathetic, human-centric, and relevant way? I love Joe's comment that he made earlier about what Dole was saying, and trust is really still the ultimate human currency, and especially during a time like this. And it's experience management that ultimately is the foundation upon which that trust is built, and whether that trust is then surfaced through a digital experience or physical experience, that's neither here nor there. It should be abstracted to a higher level to ascertain what your focus is at the end of the day to your customer.
Okay, excellent. I think, you know, empathy, empathy really is the, you know, the experience currency. And it's, you know, brands need to think about how they can demonstrate empathy and really connect with customers at this time. Joe, do you have anything to add to that?
No, it's just to emphasize that particular point. I agree. What I'm seeing, and I am even trying to personalize it. For me, a brand speaks to me if it addresses two things. One, whatever they promise, they deliver. That is the functional need. Because if I go to a telco or to a bank, I'm looking for financial solutions or financial security. Or if I go to a telco, I'm looking for a holistic communication offering or a digital services offering. That's the functional need. But I also have the emotional side of me, and that's an area which I see most brands really don't talk to, and that's what Rodion was talking about. So how do you make your brand, even in this era where you're engaging digitally, to connect the emotional side as well as the functional side? Because on the one hand, if you also just connect emotionally and you make your brand look like that really speaks to me, but your products really don't work for me, then there will also be a problem. So I think it's running with multiple speeds. On one end, you need to make your products and services tick and very well. You need to live up to your brand promise, but at the same time, you need to remember that we are people, we have feelings. We say at SAP, the future of business has feelings, and it's so true. I don't even think there is any time business have never been without feelings. Maybe the feelings angle was never coming out or was never being captured outrightly by brands. But for me, the great equation will be bring the empathetic side of you and the functional side of you, and then propel your brand in a digital way.
Excellent. We've got some specific questions from some of the audience, I think, for, you know, surrounding specifically kind of the telco and the banking world. So let me pose these questions to Veronica and Seema, to you guys. And I think, and then maybe you can expand on sort of anything else that you're seeing. So Veronica, one of the questions here is, how is the impact on Airtel business in Nigeria and other telecoms, as there's a lot of dependency on agents, and agents are not easily accessible by customers, particularly in this time?
Okay, thank you very much. You know, this question also links back to the adaptation that you're talking about. One of the biggest shocks, I think, or one of the big shocks that I have also seen is that a lot of customers actually, you know, even though online and digitization has been there for a while, a lot of customers have not really adopted the online process, especially in Africa. You know, maybe in the Western world, they've done very well in trying to do things online and, you know, not having to physically go to the bank, for instance, or not having to physically speak to an agent. In Africa, it's slightly different because a lot of customers have apathy to speaking to a system, you know, to a voice recorded system, rather than, you know, they would rather speak to an agent physically. So with COVID-19 and the, you know, the need for employees to work from home, in terms of adapting by CX, it has become very critical for us to ensure that our digital channels work, which means you necessarily don't need to have people talk. You know, we've talked about the emotional part. It's very important, but one of the things that, you know, tends to happen is that customers are not willing or ready to speak, ready to listen to the voice prompt to be able to do it themselves. So there's what we've tried to do is to try to come up with a short video, you know, animation of Do you know how or how to? So that we can actually begin to train our customers, and their mindsets on the need for them to learn how to do things themselves. If you follow the prompts, a lot of the complaints that customers are calling in for could actually be resolved. But because we're used to having to speak to somebody, we get frustrated. Customers get frustrated when they are not able to speak to a human being, rather than listening to the machine. So that's on learning that behavior and trying to get the customer to understand how to do things themselves, which is a lot more efficient and seamless for the customer. So from my company point of view, where we come in is assistance. Even though online and digitization is the order of the day, surveys have shown that 83% of web customers require some degree of customer support. So how are we able to help these customers in their quest to try and get this thing solved online? It's crucial. So that's the area that we are focusing on. Training the customer on how to do things themselves, training the customer on how to go online to your platform, how to go to your self-service application and be able to solve the problems themselves. And this means that your channels have to be seamless and frictionless, like Joe mentioned during his presentation. The ability to be able to start a transaction and finish it without too many complications on the way is a critical success factor to ensuring that we achieve this. So quality of the support that you provide at this time to customers is very important, and we keep trying to explain and apologize to the customers that you would experience skeletal services, you would experience delay in services because people are now working from home. It's no longer business as usual. And as things evolve, we would be able to perfect these processes and ensure that they're a lot more efficient and a lot more customer friendly.
Great. So it sounds like what I'm hearing you say is you guys are really maximizing the impact of some of the digital channels that you already had in place, and it's about helping customers learn how to adapt to these channels because they might be the only option right now. And even if they're not the only option, they're definitely the safest option for people in terms of maintaining social distance.
Absolutely.
Seema, so kind of in the same vein, there was a specific question from one of the participants. How do you intend to manage physical queues at NCBA? You don't want customers to congest the halls, yet you don't want to force them away. Do you prefer they take an appointment through a digital channel before coming into the branch or something else? What are some of the ways that you guys are thinking about reinventing some of these experiences or adapting them to the current times?
Okay, thanks for that question. I think similar to what Veronica said, the strategy has to be focused on all the touch points that we have because they don't work in isolation. And so therefore we're cognizant of the fact that, there are branches which are physical touch points and customers will want to come in there because, like she said again, online banking has taken off to a certain extent, but there are still customers who want that face-to-face interaction regardless of the situation that we're in. And so branches still play a very critical role for us. What we have done at our touch points has just been very, very particular about the process of receiving customers, the kind of protocols that they must go through as they enter in the most empathetic way, because, you're trying to, it's a very fine balance. How do you protect your staff and how do you get customers to feel at home? So, we've been very careful about the kind of protocols we follow. Remember, we're also dealing with cash, which is one of the, the highest infection sources that you could possibly have. So we have to be very, very careful for that. But in terms of physical spaces, we've taken those precautions. We've also been very particular about the queue management, putting in little footsteps about how the queuing system has to be, what kind of services we can push to digital channels. So we will have somebody engaging consistently on what can be done on the channel. So even as a customer will transact at the branch, we've automated notifications to them post-transaction. Did you know that you could do this online, or did you know that you could engage with our call center on this, and so forth. So again, like Veronica said, a lot of education to have that full strategy approach where we educate on all the available options whilst also ensuring that we are available at the branches where we need to be. Remember, this is the time where we really need to be there for our customers. Customers are in dire need of our services when it comes to things like loans, restructuring, and so forth. And some of those things are very difficult to discuss with a computer or a machine. You really want somebody to be there and say, I have a problem, I've just lost my job. That's a big deal for somebody. So it's just a fine balance, being there for customers whilst ensuring that we are being as safe as we possibly can, protecting both our customers and our staff at the same time.
Yeah. Are you finding that drive, to decongest the branch, is that more of a push or a pull? Was there a big demand from customers to make those changes, or was the bank more aware of the risks sooner?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. I mean, the bank obviously, through a lot of industry initiatives and so forth, is a lot more informed about what's happening, and we therefore had to lead on that and try to push our customers onto the channels. Luckily for us, we do have a very high uptake for mobile, so online may not be as effective, but considering what the likes of mobile money has done for this economy, that's a very easy channel for us to get our customers on. So what we've tried to do, in as much as we do have customers coming in, we've tried to adapt our existing channels by pushing a lot of processes that you would ordinarily have to do face-to-face to those channels. So we will digitize, let's say, a personal loan application so that you can then do it on the internet and online and so forth. So there is a lot of adaptation around business processes that's going on to direct that, but it definitely is a push from the bank. There are customers who are very tech savvy and very comfortable around transacting on the channels, but there are some who require a little more encouragement.
Yeah. Now here's kind of a different way to think about this. We've been talking mostly about examples from the private sector, but the public sector plays a really important role in people's lives. What about managing a customer experience in government institutions where service drives legislative compliance? What are you guys seeing in the places where you live and work?
Okay. From our own, from my environment, I've seen in recent times some public sectors reaching out to telecommunications to help them set up small, like call center, and give them training on, on how to manage that, so that they will be able to also attend to, engage their customers or engage, the citizens who would want to reach out to them for one thing or the other, whether it's the citizens in diaspora or the citizens within a specific area of service. We've seen that in recent times. So I think the idea of customer experience being a fundamental and a pivotal a pillar in sustaining any business or corporation is beginning to take shape here, because I have had to deal with, and even in the time of COVID, we've seen even health officials have reached out to telecoms to say, assist us, we want to set up a call center, we want to be able to have a better process on how to manage our clients or our customers, as people are calling in. So I think that consciousness is beginning to awaken in Nigeria at the moment.
I agree. If I can pick up the conversation from Veronica's point, I think even locally here in Kenya, what I've seen is that there is a lot of private and public PPP, what you call private-public partnerships,
Public-private partnership,
yes, correct, that are being forged for purposes of helping the government to actually bridge this. Like today, if you call 719, if you are in any network, whether Airtel, Safaricom here in Kenya, That call will land in a contact center that's managed by a telco organization. But that 719 short code is actually a government short code where you now dial in case you need to be quarantined or you need to ask anything to do with that. And I think that should happen. I think the government has started realizing that, number one, being accessible on digital means is very, very important. And this again is citizen experience. We talk about customer experience, but we also need to remember that the citizen is the customer, is the customer to the government. So it's an investment which I would implore the government to actually look, and they don't have to set up themselves. So this is the PPP that we are talking about. Some of these contact centers, telcos, banks know how to run these things, and the government doesn't have to reinvent the wheel, and they can lower cost substantially. I think the other point I see the government really needs to emphasize on, and it's education. At the end of the day, the more educated a citizenry is, the better it is for you. If you think about things like physical distancing, social distancing, the people who are breaking all these rules, it's not too much that they don't know. Maybe there is a livelihood angle, but the more literate a society, if you compare Iceland and Singapore and Nigeria and Kenya, you will see there's a discord there. You see how the South Koreans follow that to the letter because they are very, very well, let me not say much more educated than us, but the society is much more literate and very well educated. And this requires a very consistent way of educating the citizens. So as much as the people in the private sector are saying we need to educate our customers, even government has to think about how do I get my society much more literate. It might not be a quick fix, but this is something it has to do in the long run.
Yeah. And, you know, governments in this particular moment, I think play a really important and unique role and need to be excellent communicators. And transparency and communication is hugely important because governments have insight into what's happening and can be the kind of data aggregators, you know, so to speak, about things like infection rates and hotspots and what people can do. And, you know, they need to, I think, the customer experience that these government institutions are delivering in this moment is really founded in the communication that they have. You know, and without that sort of communication and transparency and trust, then they're in trouble. Joseph, staying with you, we've got another question from an attendee. So you indicated that airlines could lose up to 115 billion. Does that mean that customer experience objectives are set aside by airlines? We've seen call centers of airlines not responding to or attending to calls. How do customers balance such a situation in keeping the branch alive yet handling customers effectively?
Yeah, for me, airlines, I really love aircraft. If I was not doing what I'm doing, probably I would be flying. So I really try to keep tabs. I could have been a pilot potentially. I try to keep tabs with what happens in the aviation industry. And the number that I quoted there was just for this one half. I think according to IATA, airlines might lose over $300 billion alone just because of this situation. And that's just in 1 year. I think that's a very significant. If you think about the role airlines play across the ecosystem, the airlines just look like they transport people from point A to point B, but we need to remember why people move. Or cargo, for example, people move for business or they move for leisure. When they move for business, then we know that there are transactions happening. And when people travel for leisure, we all know there are economies which are almost completely dependent. I think I heard the Prime Minister of Iceland yesterday say that in Iceland, 80% of the economy is dependent on tourism. So you can imagine if people are not coming in, then the impact on the economics is really, really huge. So for airlines, they will have to strike a balance because really you cannot transport me digitally. At the end of the day, I can buy a ticket digitally, I can call the contact center, I can pay digitally. But when it comes to the day I want to land in New York from Nairobi, I still have to show up to an airport, which is a physical area. I'll need to get to an aircraft, which is a physical product, and then I'll need to be flown. Now the question will be, how do we get the consumer and the customer and the travelers confidence to be able to come back to this kind of environment? Because we all know, I personally believe airports are some of the places you can pick pathogens very easily. Research was even done that the tray of an aircraft seat, it might even be much more dirtier than a public toilet. If you see a swab done on it, you might be very surprised.
Yeah.
So I think also for airlines, they really need to think about not just returning to normal, but how to actually get the people wanting to travel again if they are going to reduce the kind of exposure that they're going to be. So whether it's lounges, whether it's the pre-boarding areas, whether it's on the seats, how the aircraft are cleaned. I believe you've seen what Emirates is doing, what Qatar is doing. It will be a very huge change for the airline industry, and for them to recover, they really have to be completely empathetic and to really show that they have a huge interest in understanding and making sure that we are healthy even as we are transported.
Yeah, I mean, there are some experiences, you know, that won't happen in the digital world that need to happen in the physical world, and
Yeah.
it's going to probably take a while before consumers are comfortable getting out of their bubbles and interacting with things and touching things. You know, I mean, maybe it'll go back to normal at some point, but certainly it's going to take a while for sort of the psychological, I don't want to use the word scarring, but, you know, the psychological changes that have happened to kind of, you know, wear off, I guess. What companies or brands do you guys think have done an exemplary job of adapting to the current situation, and what has underpinned their success?
Okay, if I can come in here, I think companies, some companies have been very proactive in immediately, you know, reinventing themselves and trying to figure out what can they do. I was reading on the internet about Emirates Sky. You know, Emirates Sky Cargo. It's supposed to be the Emirates has one of the highest you know, businesses international in terms of freight across the world. And according to the vice president, I think his name is Nabil Sultan, the regional VP for Cargo Emirates, what they did immediately once they realized that their passenger aircraft had to be grounded because of COVID-19, they immediately, you know, converted some of the passenger planes into freight carriers. So they've intensified their operations to ensure that they're able to move essential service, essential goods and health materials across the world, which I think is being proactive and being very creative in the ability to do so. Also, DP World, I think it's also Dubai is the largest. I understand that this DP World has the largest port operations across the world. You know, working from Dubai as well. They have 78 terminals in 6 continents. And what they did immediately also was to immediately try to protect their 15,000 employees across, you know, the port terminals, ensuring that they provided PPE for them, while some countries and some big organizations were struggling with being able to provide PPE for their essential staff. DP World was able to provide you know, the health materials for their staff immediately to ensure that they stay, you know, in business, because they are considered essential services, so they're in operation. You know, you also see a lot of even fashion industries turn to designers of face masks, you know, and trying to design face masks to be able to immediately service people. Some of them are doing it free of charge, but at least they are fully engaged and you know, providing services to people. In Nigeria, a lot of corporate organizations actually immediately also set up what you call working from home and working from alternate locations, so that they'll be able to stay in business. So you have, you know, people setting up in 2 or 3 different places to be able to continue the operation, such that if any area of the operation is contaminated, you know, while you're trying to take care of the place and disinfect, business can continue with, you know, your, you know, the people that are working from home. Even call center agents are working from home individually. You know, so I think, you know, when they say when there's adversity, people begin to think outside the box. So there's been a lot of reinventing, a lot of creativity and innovation, leveraging technology to be able to continue to sustain businesses.
Seema, what are you seeing? What brands are standing out in terms of their response?
I think it's incredible what brands are doing. They've just become so human all of a sudden. For example, Coca-Cola is one of them that stands out because what they've done is stopped all of their advertising and redirected it to recovery efforts, which is huge. Even companies like Airtel, they've launched a free learning platform for primary and secondary school children. Safaricom have waived all of the person-to-person mobile money transactions, just helping us be a more cashless environment. There are just so many people doing incredible things out there, banks offering restructuring in partnership with the central bank. Lots of smaller companies as well. I mean, it's incredible to see even the smallest of companies who hardly have that much meat, to give away, just getting in there and going out, especially to the affected areas and within slums and so forth, carrying food bags, like bags enough for the week, because they're the people who work and earn from day to day. So whatever they earn that day is what they will spend and survive on. So small brands are going out there and doing things like that. Amref have done some great things. There are just so many brands. It's actually quite humbling to just see what people are capable of in such a crisis environment. It's incredible.
Yeah. Rudy and Joseph, any brands that have stuck out to you guys as organizations?
Yeah, so I mean, from my perspective, I think one of the key things
that have really responded well to this.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I think one of the key things that we should just acknowledge is that, in times of crisis, people generally want to be understood and heard, and they are extremely sensitive to a brand's tone and its motive, right? So are you reaching out to help them, or are you trying to sell them something? Or does that outreach feel authentic and caring, or does it appear self-serving? So brands that have really been successful in that is brands that have understood this and have embraced and supported their actions with regards to this. And it's interesting because it's not the brands that exhibit the coolest product or have the best price or the most memorable marketing campaigns that are thriving. It's brands that actually are emotionally intelligent. They're communicating with care and honesty and empathy. They focus on building that trust. I love Seema's example of what Coca-Cola has done, because that exemplifies what we're talking about here. There'll obviously be obvious winners. So if you think about healthcare brands, if you think about delivery services, online work platforms, e-commerce, they've kind of benefited as a result of the situation, right? Just take a look at how the subscriber numbers of Netflix has exploded, or how Amazon has thrived. But it's businesses, and especially I admire the SMEs, because it's businesses that have really changed their business models during this time. They are the ones for me that are truly to be admired. A simple example is Club Vino. Club Vino is a premier wine tasting event company. And they used to have their events at exclusive 5-star hotels before the pandemic. And then when the crisis hit in March, their business model was essentially made redundant. So they had to pivot, and they had to take their tastings, and make it a completely digital experience. And who would have ever thought about that, like wine tasting online? So for me, I admire brands like that very much. And I think if you think about fluidity, agility, value focus, these are the things that, in terms of traits, that'll help companies thrive in this new reality we're finding ourselves in.
Absolutely. If I can add to that, and I think the panelists have really made very good points. For me, we can't even forget governments. I look at the government as a brand, and I've been looking about how, say, central banks in our continent have reacted to this, and talking to Seema's point of things like loans restructuring. I think with this crisis highlights two things: life and death issues, as well as livelihoods. The livelihoods angle is very, very critical as well, because right now, as I think Veronica talked about, the question of people don't have money in their pockets. You realize that in economies that we live in here in Kenya, in Nigeria, in Ghana, people have to get money on a day-to-day basis for them to be able to fund their livelihoods. So if you have a loan and you cannot be able to service it, and then you are listed at the reference bureau, then this piles the pressure on people. And we all know when you are stressed, your immune system even becomes weaker, and therefore COVID-19 will actually. So all these things are really, really intertwined. I think the government, if we look at it as a brand, governments have done a brilliant job. I've been looking at what the governor of the central bank here in Kenya is doing. I think it's really brilliant. There are a lot of interventions across board, and they will go a long way in stimulating our economies. But to Rodion's point, and I noted it here, I think the small and medium businesses for me have really stood out. The way they were so agile. People who are manufacturing this, now they are manufacturing masks, they are making sanitizers, hand sanitizers. You realize in early March, sanitizers were very, very costly. Right now, 2 months down the line, maybe their prices have fallen by as much as 80%. Why? Because many of these companies, without even say what like Donald Trump calls the Defense Production Act, without such an act, they have been able to reorient their businesses to produce the things that citizens really need. So for me, the heroes in this business are many, but I particularly love what governments and small and medium businesses, wherever they are, have done.
It's interesting, the focus on the small and medium enterprises. I was speaking with a woman in the United States a couple of weeks ago about this, and I asked her the same question, and her response was that she was particularly impressed with what the local restaurants in her neighborhood had done. I mean, micro businesses, that they had reached out and just asked her how she was doing, and really getting these kind of heartfelt communications, and businesses trying to see, how can we recreate the restaurant experience in your home for you, combining, some creative thinking with some delivery options. It was really interesting. So it's also great to hear you guys say that the SMEs have really stepped it up, and maybe some of the big corporates out there can take a page from that book. We just have a few minutes left, and we've been able to weave in some questions from the participants as we've gone. So I just want to wrap up with one last question. So how will the enduring new normal impact the way that organizations work? So we've had the opportunity to talk a little bit about changing customer expectations and how experiences might change, but then we all know that managing and monitoring and measuring those experiences is a different thing, something that businesses need to do if they want to have great customer experiences. What will organizations and customer experience teams need to do differently in a post-COVID-19 world? Is there anybody in particular who wants to kick this off? Maybe somebody from the Rudian, from the SAP team, Rudian or Joe?
Happy to do that. So I think just a couple of things very, very succinctly. I think firstly, brands need to show humanity, people before profit. That's what's going to be telling during this time. I think they need to focus on reimagining customer experience to serve customers while they shelter. You made the point earlier about how our homes have become our shelters and how this has become our world, right? So think about reimagining that as well, which is what that restaurant, that micro business was actually trying to service. Get your online presence in order, absolutely critical. You've seen the shift from physical to digital. You have to make sure that you're in the game online. As a result of that, you must adjust your metrics of success accordingly. Success pre-COVID and success post-COVID and success during COVID are three very different realities. So how are you adjusting your metric in order to measure the success? And then the last thing I think that's critical during this time is spend as much time as possible as a brand listening. Right? Listen more to what people want, listen to what they need, listen to what they are telling you, what's important to them, and then adapt your business processes accordingly to service them in a way that adds value to them in their reality. And I think those things will go a long way to helping businesses navigate this new reality.
Okay.
Seema and Veronica, do you guys, how are you thinking about managing things in a post-COVID world?
Okay, so there's a quote from Tiffany Bova, says, customer experience is the last source of sustainable differentiation and the new competitive battlefield. So from my perspective, going forward, you know, we have talked about artificial intelligence, we've talked about digitization, we've talked about self-service channels, you know, we've talked about big data and leveraging big data to get insight on how to be able to manage customers. For me, I think it could never have been more. You can't emphasize on that more than you would do at this point in time, especially post-COVID. We've seen the necessity, we've seen the need for customers to be able to go digital and be able to do things themselves. So the continuous education of customers and creating awareness and helping them to understand how to do things from the comfort of their homes, from the convenience of their offices, is crucial for, you know, for us as CX directors. We need to be able to drive that, and that means we have to get our organization to be able to invest in the necessary tools and applications that is required to be able to achieve this, because these things won't just happen in the air. You have to be able to invest in, you know, something that you can put out there to be able to educate the customer, whether you're doing it through TV, you're doing it on the radio, you're doing it on social media. You know, those investments have to happen so that you'll be able to reach the customers and talk to them. Also, from a long-term perspective, with that happening, it means that businesses would also have to restructure, which means there may be loss of jobs, you know, at the end of the day. You know, you probably wouldn't need as many people as you need pre-COVID. You know, if you evaluate everything and you're able to achieve the digitization and the self-service that is required. Again, that means that we also have to start helping one another as human beings to help people to begin to reorientate themselves and think differently. You know, if you are in, because somebody else's business is probably your profit, your income. Now, if that business ceases, it means that source of income would also cease along with it. So it's now beginning to think, how else can you add value? You know, if what you're doing is going to be, you know, phased out because of the change in that COVID-19 has brought, people have to start thinking of how else can they add value. Even for telecommunications or banking sectors, we have to think of how else can we add value to the customer that would make an impact, rather than just continuing with the same products and services that you have, which may no longer be, you know, relevant in the scheme of things as we go along. So I think this is the new normal, and customer experience plays a pivotal role in ensuring that the new economy, the new society, you know, is able to be self-sustaining and able to live comfortably.
Wonderful. Seema, we're almost out of time, but I wanted to get your thoughts on this too. What are you thinking about in terms of how the customer experience team is going to be different in the new?
Yeah, I mean, I think the new normal is really anyone's guess right now in terms of what's going to happen in the future. But I think it's important for us to really be, like Radian said, close to the customer, listening to what it is that they're saying, look at very leading type indicators as opposed to lagging, because we need to really be agile and quick to respond in terms of how it is that they're being impacted as we transition through this. And that's where, you know, a short-term plan and a long-term plan makes sense, like Veronica said. What is our short-term plan and how can we adapt what we have right now to suit the current environment, but build for the long term, build this digital channel, which is more human, because we really need to have a more human digital channel. And I think the other thing that I do take away from this is it's important for us to be true to our brand and figure out what it is that we do and that we can do excellently. I think if everyone starts reducing what they do really, really well and focus on that, I think that's where we'll start creating a very, you know, focused, precise, and a lot more value for our customers.
Fantastic. Well, some excellent words of wisdom for the CX leaders who are out there listening to this webinar. I think we're pretty much at time now, but thank you guys so much for participating in this panel. This has been a really interesting discussion. It's been great to hear your perspectives, different perspectives, some wonderful common themes, and you know, amid this world where there's so much uncertainty, you know, and many of us are forced to work from our homes, it can be easy to focus on the gloom and doom, but I think you guys have given some great inspiration about how we can think about what's next with customer experience and delivering great experiences beyond this time of COVID-19. So with that, I will hand back over to Mohammed.
Julia, hi, thank you. It was an absolute wonderful panel session. Thanks to all our panelists, Joseph, Veronica, Rudian, Seema, and most importantly, Julia, for being the moderator. You have been absolutely wonderful. We had some really, really exciting and interesting questions coming from our audience. So thanks to all the audience. And thank you for being a part of the show. This is just the beginning. We would be meeting with all of you in more engaging, interactive CX transformation webinars. Thank you, and
Thank you.
have a lovely evening ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.